Good morning, gang. It is Sunday morning. I have done my 2 miles. I kind of wore out this morning, though. I'm late getting the program up for Sunday morning. Little trouble. Go, today. But that's okay. The day is long, and I will come around. With enough coffee and attitude, I will see it through. Be sure and go to church. If you're not ready for church, get ready and go. Nothing is more important today than going to church. Chapter 40, the book of Isaiah. We'll recap. Comfort ye, my people, saith your God. Speak ye comfortably to Jerusalem, and cry unto her that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she hath received of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough places plain. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. The voice said, Cry, and he said, What shall I cry? All flesh is grass, and all the goodliness thereof is as the flower of the field. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the Spirit of the Lord bloweth upon it. Surely the people is grass. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever. O Zion, that bringest good tidings, get thee up into the high mountain. O Jerusalem, that bringeth good tidings, lift up thy voice with strength. Lift it up. Be not afraid. Say unto the cities of Judah, Behold your God. Behold, the Lord God shall come with a strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. He shall feed his flock like a shepherd. He shall gather the lambs with his arms and carry them in his bosom. Shall gently lead those that are with young. Who hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and meted out heaven with the span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the balance in the scales, weighed the mountains in the scales, and the hills in a balance. Good morning, Pastor Haroon. Who hath directed the Spirit of the Lord, and being his counselor, hath taught him? With whom took he counsel, and who instructed him, and taught him in the paths of judgment, and taught him knowledge, and showed to him the way of understanding? Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. You know, all the world, all the problems of the world, all the might of the kings, all the nations gathered against him, they don't amount to anything. They're not even amount to the dust that's left in the measure, or a drop in a bucket. All the nations of the world and all their might and all their power and all their glory against God is nothing. He reigns supreme. He is the creator of all things, and he is apart and separate from his creation. And now he explains verse 15 specifically. Behold, the nations are as a drop of a bucket, and are counted as the small dust of the balance. Behold, he taketh up the isles as a very little thing. The isles, the coasts, the nations, the countries, the kingdoms. Beginning in verse 16, he makes some comparisons. And he says, Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor the beast thereof sufficient for a burnt offering. Lebanon was the American Northwest to the world at that time. The cedars of Lebanon, the fir trees of Lebanon. It's where David and Solomon went for the timber to build the temple and the king's house. It was their primary trading commodity. Timber, lumber, milling, woodwork was their greatest industry in their harvesting, and they sold their timber all over the Middle East. The cypress. Lebanon is not sufficient to burn. In other words, as much wood as Lebanon produces and has in their hills, it's not enough for the fire, the altar fire, nor the beast thereof sufficient for a burnt offering. You don't have enough timber in all of Lebanon to make me a big enough fire, God says. You don't have enough animals, livestock in Lebanon to make me a burnt offering. They're just not enough. Remember, the nations are as a drop in a bucket, as a small dust in the balance. All the countries together, according to verse 15, are just a little thing to the Lord. All nations before him are as nothing. As if he couldn't be more plain, he just comes out and says it. Isaiah talking about God and saying all nations before him are as nothing. They're nothing individually, and they're nothing gathered together. Remember the time when the upcoming at the Battle of Armageddon with the world and all the armies of the world gathered against the Lord and against his Christ to try to prevent the return of Jesus to the earth. That's what the Battle of Armageddon is about. They think that they're going to fight the beast and destroy Jerusalem. That's what they think. But God changes their mind when Christ begins his return from heaven and they see him coming in clouds. I mean, it'll be like the invasion from outer space. They're all trying to tell us it's going to happen. All nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted to him as less than nothing and vanity. They're not only nothing, they're less than nothing, and they're vain. Everything they try is in vain. Everything they do is out of pride. They're vanity. The nations before him are as nothing. Let's take a look. When good old King Nebuchadnezzar realizes that he's nothing too. I'm not going to read you the whole story, but he thought he was the greatest thing in the world. And he had a dream, and Daniel said that his kingdom would be taken away, and he would live like a wild beast until he acknowledged God. Verse 28 of chapter 4 of Daniel. It says, all this came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar. Good morning. Good morning, Gala. It's good to see you. It would be better to see you. All this came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of 12 months, he walked into the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. And the king spake and said, is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? Remember what it says here. All nations before God are as nothing, and they are counted to him less than nothing, and vanity, and vanity. I have built for the house of the kingdom of my might of my power, and for the honor of my majesty. Good morning, Chris. Now we rejoin here, chapter 4, Daniel, verse 31. And while the word was yet in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee, and they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee, until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. The same hour was the thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven from men, and did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle feathers, and his nails like bird claws. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes to heaven, and mine understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever and ever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. Nothing. Hear what Isaiah is saying. All the nations before him are as nothing. Verse 35, Daniel 4, and all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. And God doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou? At the same time my reason returned unto me, and for the glory of my kingdom, mine honor and brightness returned unto me, and my counselors and my lords sought unto me. And I was established in my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added unto me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, Praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are truth, and all his ways judgment. And those that walk in pride, he is able to abase. Well, we do that. We do it with an alarming rapidity and repetitiveness, just over and over and faster and faster. Amazing, the rush of pride. All nations before him are as nothing. They are counted to him as less than nothing and vanity. To whom, then, will you liken God? Or what likeness will you compare unto him? The answer to this is there is nobody you can liken to God. Nobody. He's completely separate. He's different. He's outside of his own creation. He's outside of time and space. And what likeness will you compare unto him? There is no likeness that you can compare to. That is why God in the Ten Commandments says you don't make any graven image. You don't make any representation of me, because you can't. There's nothing like me. When he says, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And then the very second commandment says, Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in the earth, in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Oh, but we do, and we have our idols even today. Good morning, Pastor Susie. I don't know if I said good morning, Chris, but God love you. To whom then will ye liken God? What likeness will you compare to him? There's just nothing. Isaiah, we haven't gotten to chapter 46, but there's a verse over here where he repeats himself. God is saying, to whom will ye liken me and make me equal and compare me that we may be alike? God is saying that I am he, I'm the one. There's nobody like me, and there is nobody like me. Paul, in his sermon on Mars Hill, which would be, I think, 17. It says, for as much then as we are the offspring of God, we ought not to think that the Godhead is like unto gold or silver or stone, graven by any art or man's device. God says, to whom will you liken God, or what likeness will you compare unto him? There is none. There just is none. And we're not supposed to build one or make one. in any fashion at all, because there is no comparison to God. And I'm like everybody else. I got a picture of Jesus hanging around somewhere. Somebody gave it to me, but I don't think I would have ever painted it, and I sure don't kneel down before it and talk to it. But he asked the same question. God asked the same question through Isaiah later on in this chapter, chapter 40 of Isaiah. In verse 25 it says, "To whom will you liken me? Or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One?" In other words, there's nobody like me. There's nobody to compare to me. Yet we seek idols. And they certainly sought idols in those days. Engraven images and baubles and statues and plaques and sconces and relics, saints and all kinds of crap. They're just a bunch of trinkets. God says, don't do it. God says, don't. Away with this bauble. That's Oliver Cromwell's famous line. When King Charles I had ordered that the Church of England be somewhat re-Catholicized. The Puritans didn't think too much of that. That was in 1640. It was a very good year, but not for the British. They fought their long civil war. It lasted about 12 years, and then for 11 years, and for about another 9 years or so, Cromwell ruled as a king, even though he didn't call himself a king. Good morning, Kevin. I tell you what, you need to be a student of history. Everything we see now has happened before. As Solomon said, there is nothing new under the sun. It says here now, verse 18, where we've been resting here, "To whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness will you compare unto him?" Of course, God says there is none. King Nebuchadnezzar says there is none. Isaiah said there is none. Paul said there is none. There's no way you can make anything that compare to God. There's nothing that you can see in, above, or under the earth that will compare to God. Yet we seek to make those comparisons and create unto ourselves idols. We're going to talk about idolatry tomorrow, beginning in verse 19. God bless you all. Have a good day at church.